Close your eyes, get cozy under the blanket, and let go of all the weight of the day behind you, while the city outside your window slowly sinks into quiet darkness, and you gradually drift off to sleep. I want to tell you an incredible story, a story of unimaginable power, of an unavoidable fate, and how an entire world once completely fell apart. This is a great, ancient legend about the end of time, the twilight of mighty gods, and the final downfall of all creation. As you drift off, you will hear how a giant chained wolf shatters his eternal bonds, how the ancient world tree shakes to its very roots, and how in one last, most terrifying battle, fearless warriors and horrific monsters meet. You will feel how a chilling, harsh wind carries away the very last hopes, as the sky is forever swallowed by darkness. But remember, even at the darkest, most destructive night, a new dawn is destined to rise. If you enjoy these cozy late-night stories, I would be truly grateful for your subscription and like. Your support really means the world, because it helps our channel grow and move forward. Thanks to you, I will be able to create videos like this much more often and bring you even more atmospheric legends before sleep. Thank you so much for your attention and your support. And none, relax, sink into sleep, and just listen. Chapter 1: Out of the Void, the Birth of Worlds. Before time began, before the first star was lit, there was no earth to walk upon, no sky above, no sand, no cold waves. There was only the great void, Ginnungagga, an abyss, knowing neither beginning nor end. To the north of this emptiness lay Niflheim, a realm of eternal ice, of absolute darkness and poisonous mist. In its very heart bubbled the well of Agelmir, the boiling cauldron. From it roared 12 dark rivers, whose waters carried only death and cold. And to the south blazed Muspelheim, a world of unbearable, all-consuming heat. Primordial fire raged there, and rivers flowed with molten metal. At the very edge of this fiery hell, leaning on his blazing sword, stood the fire giant Sota. He had stood there since the beginning of time, waiting for the hour when he would burn all of creation. Centuries passed. The toxic waters of Niflheim froze, turning into gigantic black glaciers. They slowly, with a deafening grinding, crept into the void of Ginnungagga, and from the south, caught by an unseen wind, sparks and glowing ash from Muspelheim flew to meet them. And there, in the dead center of nothingness, where dead ice met primordial fire, where the frost began to melt from the life-giving heat, the first life was born. From the drops of melted water rose Ymir, the first frost giant, a creature so colossal that his thoughts could fill oceans. He was cruel, ravenous, and fierce, like the very elements that birthed him. Following him, from the melting ice appeared Audhumla, a gigantic cow. From her massive udder flowed 4 mighty rivers of milk, which fed Ymir. But what did Audhumla feed upon? She licked the salty stones, covered in ancient frost. By the end of the first day, under her rough tongue, human hair appeared. On the second day, a head emerged from the stone. On the third day, a whole man stepped out of the block of ice. His name was Buri. He was tall, beautiful, and incredibly strong. Buri soon had a son named Bor, who took a giantess named Bestla as his wife. And in the embrace of the icy gloom, she bore him 3 sons, Odin, Vili, and Ve. The god brothers grew, and every day, the hatred in their hearts for the cruel Ymir and his offspring grew stronger. The gods knew, as long as this primordial chaos ruled the world, there would be no order, no light, no meaning. And so, Odin, Vili, and Ve rebelled. The battle was monstrous. When the giant fell, so much hot blood poured from his gaping wounds that it flooded the void of Ginnunga Gap. Almost all the frost giants drowned in this bloody flood. Only one escaped, Bergelmir. From him, a new race of giants emerged, the Jotuns. They fled east, into the cold rocks, harboring a black hatred for the sons of Bur forever. Having killed Ymir, the gods became creators. They threw the colossal body of Ymir into the center of the great void. From his cooling flesh, they shaped the earth. From his unbroken bones, they raised the rocky mountains. From his teeth, they scattered stones across the land. And the endless sea of Lod, Odin, Vili, and Ve turned into the oceans. They raised the giant's skull high above the earth, turning it into the vault of the sky. They caught the wandering sparks of Muspelheim and pinned them to the dark vault. Thus, the stars were born. From Ymir's heavy eyebrows, they built a high, impenetrable wall around the center of the earth to protect it from the rage of the surviving giants. This safe place they called Midgard, the middle world. One day, walking along the shore of their new ocean, Odin, Vili, and Ve found two lifeless trees washed up by the waves, an ash and an elm. Odin breathed life into them. Vili gave them a mind. Ve gave them speech, hearing, and sight. From the ash came the first man, Oscar. From the elm, the first woman, Embla. And to bind all worlds together, from the very center of creation, sprouted the great tree of life, the massive ash, Yggdrasil. Its roots reached into unfathomable abysses, and its evergreen crown supported the heavens. Order was created from chaos. Thus began the great era of the Aesir gods. But even then, in the deep shadow of Yggdrasil's roots, the seed of impending doom was already hidden. The three sisters of fate, the Norns, sat by the well and spun the threads of lives. They knew what the gods refused to admit. Everything born must one day die. Ragnarök was destined from the first breath of this world. Chapter 2: The Golden Age and the Price of Wisdom. High above the clouds, where the gaze of a mortal man could not reach, the Aesir gods erected Asgard, a celestial fortress of unsurpassed beauty. Its halls shone with gold and silver. In the very center rose Valhalla, the hall of the slain. The gods feasted, forged perfect weapons, and rejoiced in the world they had created. It was the golden age of Asgard. But the old father Odin, ruler of the gods, rarely smiled. Sitting upon his high throne, overlooking all 9 worlds, he saw shadows gathering at the edges of creation. He knew, to protect this world, strength alone was not enough. Absolute wisdom was needed. And so, Odin sought it at the roots of Yggdrasil, where Mimir's well bubbled, the fount of knowledge of the universe. The keeper of the well, the ancient giant Mimir, did not give his wisdom for free. The price was terrible. Without hesitation, the old father tore out his own right eye and cast it to the bottom of the dark well. After taking a sip of the icy water, he gained knowledge of the past, present, and future. He saw the fate of the gods. He saw Ragnarök. But even this was not enough to master the magic of ruins. Odin sacrificed himself to himself. For 9 long days and 9 nights, the old father hung from the branches of Yggdrasil, pierced by his own spear, Gungnir, without food or water. And when his strength had almost faded, the ruins revealed themselves. Odin became the wisest of beings, but his heart grew forever heavy with the knowledge of the coming end. While Odin sought knowledge, the heavens shook with thunder. It was Thor, the eldest son of the All-Father, the protector of Asgard and Midgard. Where Odin relied on cunning, Thor settled disputes with brute, untainted strength. In his hands, He gripped Mjolnir, the crushing hammer forged by dwarves. This hammer never missed its mark, and always returned to its master's hand. He was the fury of the storm, an impenetrable shield of light against the giants. And at the very edge of Asgard, where the flaming rainbow bridge Bifrost connected the realms, stood the white god, Heimdall, the watchman of the gods, who needed no sleep. His vision pierced the darkness for hundreds of leagues. At his belt hung the golden horn, Horn. Heimdall knew one day he would have to blow it, heralding the beginning of the final battle. The gods of light were strong. They seemed invulnerable, but Asgard would not be Asgard without a flaw. Among the proud Aesir lived one whose nature was woven from contradictions, deceit, and shifting fire. By blood, he was a Jotun, a giant, but Odin, bound by an ancient oath, called him brother. His name was Loki, beautiful, incredibly intelligent, flattering, and cruel. Loki was the god of mischief. He saved the gods from desperate situations, but he was also the one who drove them into them. The gods did not yet know that this very mocking trickster, wandering through the golden halls, would be the one to tear their world down to its foundations. For the seed of Ragnarök was to sprout not from external enemies, but from betrayal, from within. Chapter 3. The Seeds of Doom, the Children of Loki. Loki often left the shining halls of Asgard. He was bored by order. His mutable soul craved shadows. He traveled far to the east, into the harsh Jotunheim, where lay Ironwood, the ancient ironwood. The trees there were as black as coal, and their leaves as sharp as blades. In the heart of this eerie forest lived Angerboda, an old giantess witch, whose name meant bringer of sorrow. Loki shared a bed with her in the dark, and from this monstrous union, 3 children were born. 3 creatures, in whose veins flowed the blood of chaos and the venom of destruction. The first was a girl named Hel. Only half of her looked like a living human. The other half was blue-black, covered in rot. A grave cold emanated from her. The second born was Jormungandr, a hideous serpent with pitiless yellow eyes, exuding caustic venom with every exhale. The third to come into the world was Fenrir. At first glance, just a wolf pup, but in his chest beat the heart of a primordial, all-consuming hunger. News of the monstrous brood reached Asgard. The prophecies burned Odin's mind. He knew these very creatures would bring doom to the gods. He ordered the Aesir to take Loki's children by force. When the monsters were brought before Odin's throne, even the bravest warriors averted their eyes. Odin looked at Hel. He did not kill her, but banished her to the darkest depths of Niflheim. He gave her dominion over the realm of the dead, Helheim. Then Odin grabbed the venom-spitting serpent Jormungandr and hurled him from the heavens, straight into the bottomless ocean surrounding Midgard. But the serpent did not drown. He began to grow at a terrifying speed, until he encircled the entire earth, forced to bite his own tail. The world serpent, waiting at the bottom of the sea. But with the third child, the wolf Fenrir, the gods made a fatal mistake. They decided to keep the wolf in Asgard, hoping to tame him. Fenrir grew by leaps and bounds. Soon he was the size of a house. His eyes burned with hellfire, and his saliva burned through stone. Only one god dared approach him, the god of martial honor, the fearless terror. Realizing the wolf could no longer roam free, the gods decided to bind him. They forged heavy chains, lading and Dromi, but the wolf laughed and shattered them into dust with a single jerk. Fear gripped Asgard. Odin sent messengers to the dwarfs in Svartalfheim. Using the most ancient magic, the dwarfs forged Bleidnir, a ribbon, as thin and soft as silk, but stronger than anything in existence. The gods brought Fenrir to an isolated island. The wolf, sensing magic, refused to put it on. "I will allow myself to be bound," growled Fenrir, "only if one of you places his hand in my mouth, as a pledge that there is no trickery." Absolute silence fell. No one wanted to lose a hand, and only the brave Terra, without a word, stepped forward. He calmly placed his right hand between the razor-sharp fangs of the giant wolf. The gods wrapped Bleidnir around Fenrir's paws. The harder the wolf struggled, the more the silken ribbon cut down to the bone. Realizing he had been tricked, Fenrir snapped his jaw shut in a fury. Ter lost his hand, but the wolf was bound. All the gods laughed, rejoicing in their victory. All except Ter, and Loki did not laugh. The god of deceit stood in the shadows, watching as his children were banished, drowned, and chained. In that moment, nothing remained in his heart but an all-consuming, cold hatred for Asgard. The gods thought they had prevented Ragnarök, but in reality, they had only made it inevitable. Chapter 4: The Fading of the Light, the Death of Baldur. Among all the gods of Asgard, there was one whom absolutely everyone loved. Baldur the Good, son of Odin and the goddess Frigg. He was so pure and bright that a soft radiance emanated from his face. Where Baldur walked, flowers bloomed. As long as Baldur lived, Asgard stood unshakable, and no darkness could consume the world. But one day, the god of light stopped smiling. He began to be tormented by dark, suffocating nightmares. He dreamed of chains breaking, and of himself falling into the cold abyss of Helheim. In terror, his mother Frigg traversed all 9 worlds. She spoke with fire and water, iron and stone, trees and beasts. From everything in the universe, she extracted a sacred oath, never to harm her son Baldur, and the world swore. The gods decided to test the oath. They placed Baldur in a clearing and began throwing stones at him. The stones bounced off. They slashed him with swords, but no metal dared to touch his skin. Baldur became invulnerable, as gods celebrated. But standing apart, his face hidden beneath the hood, was Loki. The god of deceit transformed into a frail old woman and coaxed a secret from Frigg. It turned out that to the west of Valhalla grew a tiny shoot of mistletoe. Frigg had considered it too young and weak to demand an oath from it. Loki found this bush. He cut a branch, and using black magic, carved it into a deadly, sharp arrow. Returning to the clearing, Loki approached the blind god Horder. "Baldur's brother, why do you not throw anything at your brother?" Loki asked. "I have no weapon, and I cannot see." Horder replied, "I will help you," whispered Loki. Placing the mistletoe arrow into the blind god's hands, "I will guide your hand, Frey." The arrow slipped from the bowstring. The thin twig of mistletoe pierced right through Baldur's invulnerable chest. The bright god fell dead. In that very second, the radiance left Asgard. The gods froze in mute horror, and when they turned around, Loki had already vanished. The gods tried to ransom Baldur's soul from hell. The ruler of the dead set a condition. If every living creature in the world wept for Baldur, he would return. And everyone wept. Humans, giants, trees, and stones. Only one old giantess, sitting in a dark cave, did not shed a tear. "Let hell keep what she has," she said with dry lips, and Baldur remained in the realm of the dead forever. Everyone knew that beneath the guise of that giantess hid Loki. The grief of the gods gave way to blind, incinerating rage. They caught Loki. The time of reckoning had come. They dragged the god of deceit into a dark underground cave with the intestines of his own slain son. They bound Loki dead to 3 sharp rocks. Magic turned these fetters into cold, impenetrable iron. The vengeful goddess Kadi hung a massive venomous snake directly above his face. Venom dripped right into the eyes of the god of deceit. His faithful wife Sigyn stays with him to this day, holding a wooden bowl, catching the poisonous drops. But when the bowl overflows, and she turns away to empty it, the drops fall onto Loki's face. In those moments, the god of deceit writhes in such monstrous convulsions that the whole earth shakes. Men call these earthquakes. Loki was bound. Fenrir was bound. The serpent lay at the bottom. As God plunged into mourning, far away, in the north, the first snowflakes of the great winter fell. The end of the world had begun. Chapter 5. The beginning of the end. Thimblewinter. The death of Balder was the beginning of the end. The world lost its soul, and in place of light came unprecedented cold. Thimblewinter, the great winter, arrived. Snow fell from all 4 corners of the world without stopping. The sun grew pale. For 3 endlessly long years, winter ruled Midgard. Only ice, gloom, and a piercing wind that stripped the skin. A true nightmare began in the world of men. Hunger and despair destroyed all honor. Brother raised axe against brother. Sons killed their fathers. Mercy vanished, giving way to primordial cruelty. It was an age of swords, an age of shattered shields, an age of wolves. Then, 2 colossal celestial worlds, Skoll and Hati, who had chased the sun and moon for centuries, finally caught their prey. Skoll opened his jaws and devoured the sun. The heavens turned blood red. A moment later, Hati swallowed the moon. The stars fell from the sky. All 9 worlds were plunged into absolute, impenetrable darkness. The earth shuddered with such primordial force that mountains crumbled to dust. The tree of life, the great Yggdrasil, groaned from its roots to its crown. Magic crumbled. Chains lost their power. In the deep cave, the iron binding Loki turned to dust. The god of deceit squared his shoulders, fire of madness in his eyes. On a distant island, the wolf Fenrir snapped the silken ribbon Gale with a deafening crack. He was free, and he was incredibly hungry. Fenrir opened his maw. His lower jaw scraped the earth, and his upper jaw touched the empty heavens. At the bottom of the ocean, Jormungandr awoke. The world serpent surged toward the surface. The oceans bulked. Giant tsunamis crashed onto the land, washing away cities. The serpent exhaled clouds of caustic, greenish venom into the air, poisoning the sky and the water. From the realm of the dead surfaced Naglfar, the ghost ship built entirely from the nails of the dead. Loki took the helm, leading an army of the dead and frost giants toward the plain of Ygritte. At the border of Asgard, the bright god Engdahl raised the golden horn. Yol horn. He blew into it with all his might. The sound swept through the worlds. It meant only one thing. Ragnarök had come. The enemies were at the gates. In Asgard, the doors of Valhalla burst open. Hundreds of thousands of Einherjar, the greatest fallen warriors, marched out. Ahead of them, rode the old father rode in on his 8-legged steed Sleipnir. Beside him, swinging his hammer Mjolnir, strode Thor. The gods marched to meet their death. They knew they would lose, but not a single one lowered their head. From the south, the sky split in two. The fire giants of Muspelheim poured into the world, led by the behemoth Surtur. When the army of fire stepped onto the Rainbow Bridge Bifrost, it shattered into stardust. All the armies of the universe were converging on the great plain of Vigrid. The final battle was about to begin. Chapter 6: Twilight of the Gods, the final battle. The plain of Vigrid stretched 100 leagues in length and 100 leagues in width, but even this was not enough. Two countless armies clashed with such force that the shock wave shook the stars themselves. Golden armor mixed with rotting flesh, shining swords hewed blue bodies, while the primordial fire of Muspelheim devoured everything in its path. It was the agony of a dying universe. Through the chaos, the gods sought their foreordained foes. The bright god Freyr rushed to intercept the fire behemoth Surtur, but Freyr's hands were empty. Armed only with a stag's antler, he fought bravely, but flame knows no pitiful flesh. One swing of the fiery sword, and the god fell, cloven in two. The one-handed terror, god of martial honor, engaged in a mortal struggle with Garn, the monstrous hellhound. The hound sank its rotting fangs right into Ter's throat. Choking on his own blood, the god of war plunged his sword straight into the beast's black heart. They collapsed onto the blood-soaked earth together, dead. In the center of the plain, a storm raged. Thor clashed with his eternal curse, the world serpent Jormungandr. The serpent spewed rivers of venom. Thor, covered in burns, leapt into the air and brought Mjolnir down upon the monster's colossal skull. The heavens burst, the serpent's skull shattered, and the lifeless carcass collapsed. Thor had won. He turned back to his comrades. He took one stead, a second, a third. On the ninth stead, the serpent's venom stopped his great heart. The mighty Thor, hope of gods and men, collapsed dead. Meanwhile, Odin the All-Father fought his final battle. But what did a spear mean against a creature whose maw covered the sky? The wolf Fenrir was the embodiment of chaos. With one monstrous lunge, Fenrir swallowed Odin whole. The greatest of the gods vanished into the dark moon. But no sooner had the wolf snapped his jaws than Vidar, the silent god of vengeance, son of Odin, appeared. Wearing his indestructible shoe, Vidar stepped onto Fenrir's lower jaw, grabbed the upper jaw, and with a primordial roar, tore the monster's maw in two. The father was avenged, but Asgard was left without a ruler. At the edge of the battlefield, surrounded by mountains of corpses, two met: Heimdall, watchman of the gods, and Loki, god of deceit. They spoke not a word. In a single motion, they lunged at each other. Heimdall's sword pierced Loki's chest, but Loki, dying with a mad smile, thrust his poisoned blade under the ribs of the white god. The two sworn enemies collapsed upon each other. The gods were dead. The plain of Vigrid had turned into an endless sea of dead flesh. Only one remained standing: Surtur. The fire giant towered above the corpses. His time had come. He raised his flaming sword high and brought it down upon the earth. The primordial fire broke free. Asgard melted, Midgard ignited. The fire spread to the branches of the great ash, Yggdrasil. The sky caught fire, the oceans bulged, the charred, dead earth, letting out a final heavy groan, slowly sank into the hissing black waters. The stars went out, the light vanished, time stopped, Ragnarök was fulfilled. The world died.